Welcome to another Valorant Fantasy League redesign session. I'm really excited for today. We get to take all of our analysis and all of our sort of behind the scenes work, and we get to start to apply that visually. So we're going to look at our first concept out of 3 in this video. This one's going to be called Hacked or Hacker. This concept is not meant to be anything final. It's meant to sort of like just broadly visualize what this product could look like at the end. So, and then we're going to do 2 more. We have 2 more concepts we're going to look at different videos. But today we're going to look at Hacked or Hacker. And without further ado, let's hop in. So the idea behind this concept was to take the elements from the game Valorant and really build off that brand, 1. And then number 2 is like try and make this experience really immersive and really unique by making it feel like you're in the game, like maybe you're a hacker in the game itself. So that was the perspective that we took to come up with this concept. Now, how do we get here? So first of all, let's look at the in-game UI for Valorant and look at some of the things we were inspired by. So first of all, you'll notice that there are no square angles on this screen. There's no square edges, there's no squares at all, and there's also no circles. Instead, we see a lot of diamonds and diamond edges. So here we have, instead of having this round off or squared off, we have a little diamond, another diamond inside of that. On the top right, we have these little diamonds. So you don't see any squares or circles anywhere. The second main motif we notice on here is this really intricate line work, which to me reminds me of like Lord of the Rings style line work. If it was really perfected down to the pixels, so almost digitized, so like a digital version, perfectly symmetrical version of Lord of the Rings line work. I love this motif. I wish I had thought of it. I just think it's so cool. So very cool. I particularly like the way it looks down here on the bottom right. But this is, just a very unique line work, which I would say is the second piece to this. And you notice both of these themes through every single element of this design, right? So we have these little, I don't know, kind of bucket feeling items here, which again, don't have square edges. They have a little bit of line work with these diamonds. Some of the line work is like kind of partially opaque. So it'll have some transparency to it. And then they'll have like a really, they'll have sections of the lines that are perfectly solid. So anyway, 2 big takeaways: no squares, no circles, but lots of lines, lots of diamonds, etc. If we look at the agent select screen on the top left is the original agent select screen that the game launched with and had for a couple of years. And on the bottom right is the current agent select screen. On the top left in particular, you'll notice some similar line work. So very intricate line detailing here. Just consistent with the same ideas. And then on the bottom right, you can see that started to be like made bolder. Like the decisions are a little bit more bold. They aren't as dependent on lines. Things are starting to become a bit more squared off. So I get why they're doing this. It makes things easier to work with. It gives things like just a bolder presence. But you can see that there's a little ambiguity in the brand. But overall, I would still say those big ideas apply. If we look at some of the marketing materials, I believe that this was a background screen, desktop screen. We see some of these similar elements, right? We see this intricate, detailed line work. We also see some like digital artifacts around the edges, right? Like they're very grid-like, but you just have these kind of random pixels or lines that feel a little bit like leftovers. Like there's no specific reason for them to be there, but they are there yet the same. And then the typography we see here is, we have an underscore, we have 2 slashes. It's very wide space to give it that sort of like monospaced feel to it. It's not technically monospaced, but it sort of has that feel to it. So it really has that like digital, it's really going for that like digital kind of hacker feel. And then we have these ambiguous, almost like alien style icons there. So a lot of things going on here that we were inspired by. At the end here, we're looking at a design that I actually did for another project. I've been wanting to do a Valorant project for a while, and I had this idea for a tracker. I won't go into how it works, but you can see how I've started to like appropriate some of those themes, like the detailed line work where it gets thicker and thinner. My personal color palette, my favorite color palette is white, black, and gold. So you see that coming through here. I particularly love white lights. So like my gaming setup is like all white lights. I don't like blue. I don't like green. Don't like red. I mean, they're fine, but I think all white has this really bold look to it, and it's complemented by this like gold character. I guess it's yellow on screens, but in real life, I just love gold. Okay, so overall, that's what we were inspired by with our design, and you can see a lot of that is coming through here. You see the intricate line work that is broken up. You see we do have squared off edges because of the way that the agent select screen worked, and specifically this background agent select screen where it has all the agents at the bottom. We've copied that idea as well, so you can see that we have all the agents on the bottom. But what I want to dig into next is now that we've kind of looked at the artifacts, etc., that inspired this, is dig into the cards themselves. So on each of these cards, there's a few things going on. So first of all, we have the team logo in the top right, and then the background colors are the team colors. So for Cloud9, it's just like double shades of blue. Gen G is black and gold. Paper X is like got wild colors. And then Fnatic, orange and black. So you see that these colors are what is the background to the card. And then the player is really just like emerging from the mist. And the player is much larger and like more centralized here and just a more center point of focus. If we look at the original design, you can see we have a really small player image that's kind of floating. Still recovering from being sick. It's kind of floating. So we've really done away with that, and we've really emphasized the player as like a heroic part of this concept. Their name is pulled up, like it overlaps them a little bit in a way that it's still always going to be readable, but it really just adds to like a dynamic sense to this. And overall, I would say I was kind of going for like a baseball card sort of feel. Not exactly, because you don't have people pitching in this. There's no action shots like that, but taking the resources that are available and really trying to come from that perspective towards this. We have other detailed elements like the points, their win or loss for the week, who they played, the role that they fill. And we also have different formats of this card depending on where they sit. So whether they're a starter, a sub, or I guess A team, B team, or a on the bench. Now, one of the things that we notice in our original design in the current app is that the way we have this set up is that there's 2 players per role. So 2 duelists, 2 initiators, 2 controllers, and 2 sentinels. And then we have 3 people on the bench. And the way that the game works is that you put 2 players in each role for the week. Whichever one scores higher is the one that you get points from. So one of the player gives you points, one of the player doesn't. It's essentially like rolling with advantage. Whichever one scores higher, you get to keep. However, one of the goals that we wanted to explore was trying to keep the experience feeling super immersive. And I noted before there was a comment around, hey, can we make this feel like I'm managing an actual roster of 5? And I started to think about ways to do this. And one of the things that came to mind, and well, actually, let me just kind of walk you through how I started to resolve this. So I had an idea. And let me just really explicitly lay out how it works now, and then I'll show you the idea I had for how it could work in order to really take the existing format and make it seem like it's a 5-player roster. Okay, so the way it works now is you have 11 players. You have 2 duelists, 2 initiators, 2 controllers, 2 sentinels, and then 3 wildcards. And so the way you might set up a typical week is you have your 2 duelists, you have an initiator, and then maybe you think, well, my secondary initiator is probably not going to do so well this week, so you toss in a wild card there. And then you have the same thought for a controller, but you're actually like, yeah, neither of my controllers are particularly going to do well, so you toss in a wild card at the top. And then for sentinels, you just toss in both your sentinels. Now, again, it doesn't matter which order you put these in. If this wild card does better, this is the one who scores, and then the initiator won't get points. If the controller does better, like, it doesn't matter which one's on top. There's an additional aspect to this, which right now is called the IGL. So the way the game works now is you have this this tag, I guess you would call it, that you can put on any player, and what that does is it sets them up as able to give you bonus points for the week. So on my duelist, I might designate them. I might designate them the IGL, and whatever points they get for that week are doubled. So if they earn 16 points, it becomes 32, and that gets added to my score. And I can do this on any role. I can do it on the duelist, which is probably pretty common since duelists tend to be the highest scoring. I can do it on my wild card. I can do it on a controller, where it doesn't really matter. Now, my thought is that we could take this idea, and let's say that we add it to this controller guy here. We could take this idea and we could create, instead of creating a little designated tag, we could create a new role. And instead of IGL, we're going to call it top frag, because I think that's a better word for it than IGL. We'll just call it top frag, but I'll indicate IGL for clarity there. And so we're going to create a new role there. And then instead of, if we think this controller is going to be our top frag for the week, we would take them. Many apologies. I can't wait for this to be over and to feel all the way better again. So we create a new role here. And then once basically you're just dragging things. Otherwise, you can't play more than 8 players. So you can't drag a second person into the controller place. I mean, you could, drag a duelist out and drag a controller in, whatever you want to do, drag the duelist back in, take out your initiator. However you want to do that, as long as you're only playing 11 players and you've got 2 per role. And then when you hit save, it would essentially just take all these players and just format it in a just like an easier to read way. So, so you have 2 duelists. So you might have like your top 5 like this, and then your bottom 3, might be like formatted a little bit differently. And so you kind of have this A team and B team. It's a little bit convoluted, but I'm okay with that because, ultimately this is a game, and sometimes it's the complexities of a game that make them more fun and engaging. So I was interested in exploring this idea, and that's one of the things that we did explore for this idea. So let me think if there's anything else to really add here around our first concept, hacker. I don't think there's anything in particular I want to add right now. However, I will say I'm really excited for our next concept. It's called All Stars, and it's going to be a bit more focused around, just kind of a more energetic and typical sports app. So again, thank you for your patience with my cough. I'm going to end the video there. I hope to see you in the next one.